Ilara gripped the rusted key to a barn she had inherited from a great-aunt whose name she barely knew. The lonesome Wyoming wind moaned through cracked pine boards as she stepped inside the dim and dusty silence. Sunlight pierced the roof holes in trembling shafts, illuminating decades of hay dust dancing like forgotten spirits around her. Her fingers brushed the weathered wall, and she froze when she felt rough carvings beneath her trembling fingertips. She squinted in the low light and made out a heart with the words, "Wyatt loves Clara, June 1888. All along the beams, messages appeared like whispers from another century, each line full of desperate, aching tenderness. One read, "The snow is heavy tonight, but your smile is the only warmth my soul will ever need." Tears welled as she traced another that said, "They can fence the land, but they cannot cage my heart for you." Her phone had no signal, so she rushed to the local historical society, where a kind archivist gasped at photographs. The story emerged that a schoolteacher named Clara vanished after a wealthy rancher threatened to hang the cowboy Wyatt. Legend said Wyatt disappeared soon after, never learning that Clara had escaped to a distant convent with a broken heart. That evening, a tall, dusty-cheeked rancher named Cole Wyatt appeared at the barn door with stormy gray eyes. He claimed his great-great-grandfather was that same cowboy Wyatt, and the barn had been his family's lost holy ground. Together, they lit an old lantern and read the carved words aloud, voices blending with the creaking timber's sorrow. Cole's rough finger traced, "If you are reading this, know I never stopped loving you, Clara, my wildflower." Ilara saw a deep scar across his palm and realized the pain of lost love was etched into living skin. He confessed his own fiancée had left him at the altar years ago, shattering his faith in forever completely. Over the following days, Cole brought his tool belt and a quiet patience, mending broken beams while she cleared debris. She discovered a hidden loft containing an old tin box with a brittle photograph of Clara beneath the word "Wait." On the back, in faded ink, were the words, "My dearest Wyatt, I will find you in every lifetime beyond." She handed the photo to Cole, and his stoic composure cracked like dry earth, longing for a healing rain. He pressed the image to his chest and murmured that his grandfather died whispering about an unfinished love story. That night, under a canopy of infinite stars, they sat on the barn's threshold, sipping coffee from a dented thermos. Ilara confessed she'd fled the city after her ex-fiancé chose ambition over her gentle and hopeful artist's heart. Cole said she was the first person who made the silence feel like music rather than unbearable, hollow loneliness. She reached for his hand naturally, and they watched a shooting star blaze a silver trail across the velvet darkness. Days turned into a sacred rhythm of restoration, their laughter filling the barn as old ghosts grew peacefully quiet. Cole found a carving he had never seen before, hidden behind a rotted board, simply saying, "Marry me in June." He took Ilara's hands in his trembling ones and whispered that maybe they were the June Wyatt and Clara waited for. She didn't speak, but her tearful smile and the way she pressed her forehead to his answered every unspoken question. They planted wildflowers around the barn's foundation, each seed a promise that beauty could grow from the deepest brokenness. One golden afternoon, Cole carved a new heart onto a fresh beam, writing Ilara and Cole beside the old inscription. He knelt in the sawdust, holding a ring that once belonged to Clara, passed down through his grieving family's generations. With a voice as steady as the mountains, he asked her to become his forever within these sacred, story-soaked walls. She said yes through joyful sobs, and as the ring slid onto her finger, a barn owl cooed softly above. They married in that restored barn, wildflowers woven through her braid and cowboy boots polished to a high shine. The same archivist officiated, telling everyone gathered that two love stories were finally being woven into one triumphant vow. Cole's grandmother, 92 and frail, wept openly as she touched the carvings and thanked Ilara for healing their legacy. After the ceremony, Cole lifted Ilara onto his horse, and they rode through the pasture as evening painted the sky. He pointed to a ridge and said his grandfather swore he saw Clara's spirit there, waiting with open arms forever. Elara leaned against his broad back and felt a profound peace she had never thought possible in her shattered world. Months later, the barn became a community gathering place for storytelling nights, square dances, and young couples carving their promises. Elara published an illustrated book of the barn's carvings, dedicating it to every soul who ever loved against the odds. Tourists and romantics came from far away, tracing the century-old words and leaving fresh wildflower offerings on the beams. Cole would often find Elara sitting on the loft, reading Wyatt's words aloud to the baby gently growing within her. Their daughter was born in the first snow of December, and they named her Clara Wyatt in sacred doubled honor. Cole rocked Clara in the barn while humming an old melody his father swore came from Wyatt's own lost lullaby. On Clara's first birthday, they placed her tiny hand against the heart carving and told her the story of love's endurance. Elara began carving a new beam, chronicling their own journey so that future generations would know hope never truly dies. One night, a violent storm threatened the barn, and Cole stood in the howling wind, reinforcing beams with fierce determination. Elara joined him, hammering boards side by side, proving that love was as much a shelter as a feeling. When the storm passed, they found only superficial damage, and Cole whispered that the old love had guarded them powerfully. Their second child, a boy named Wyatt, grew up running through the barn, tracing his ancestors' handwriting with stubby fingers. Elara taught both children to whittle, and they carved small hearts beside their parents' names while crickets sang twilight hymns. The town declared the barn a historical romance landmark, and couples traveled there to propose beneath the ancient wooden testimony. On their 10th anniversary, Cole recreated their first coffee night on the threshold, complete with the same dented thermos cup. He handed her a letter he had carved into a flat board, confessing every quiet fear and boundless love he held. She read it beneath the lantern light and promised to keep that board as their family's most treasured heirloom forever. Another decade passed, and gray threads wove through their hair as they welcomed a granddaughter with Clara's gentle, knowing eyes. Cole, now stooped but still strong, led the little girl to the barn and told her the story in a whisper. He said, "Love can be carved into wood, but it must also be carved into daily kindness, patience, and forgiveness." The child traced the old and new carvings, her small mouth forming the words as if sealing a promise inside. Elara watched from the doorway, heart swelling with the full-circle grace that had turned a ruin into a sanctuary. Eventually, Cole grew frail, and on his final evening, he asked Elara to take him to the barn one last time. She wheeled him inside the warm, hay-scented glow, and he placed his palm over Wyatt and Clara's carved heart wearily. With a smile, he whispered that he could see Clara and Wyatt dancing in a meadow where all fences had fallen. He passed in the barn's quiet hold, and Elara pressed a kiss to his temple, knowing love had won again. After the funeral, the whole community lined up to place wildflower petals along the barn walls in his beloved memory. Elara carved Cole's name next to hers with trembling hands, adding the date and the word everlasting beneath it all. She lived many more years, telling the barn's story to school groups, young lovers, and anyone needing proof of miracles. Before her own passing, she recorded a video for her grandchildren, standing in front of the glowing, carved, sacred wall. She said, "This barn is living proof that love written in wood becomes part of the bones of the earth." Her great-granddaughter now runs a retreat at the barn, and every visitor leaves with a small wooden heart they carved together. The two weathered hearts from 1888 still hold center place, never painted over, guarded by fresh rosemary and glowing candles. Couples still weep reading Wyatt's final carving, discovered years later beneath a loose floorboard that simply declared, "You were enough." And so the Echo Barn stands on the Wyoming plain, a place where unfinished love finally found its eternal western home.